Today, we're jumping into a story that is just wild. We're talking about a real estate deal from the 1800s that is somehow casting this huge shadow over what's happening in the world right now. It's a story packed with empires, war, and seriously, one of the biggest historical ironies you will ever come across.
And you know what? Let's just start with this quote, because it really sets the stage perfectly. A historian, Pierce Bateman, says, "On the grand historical scale, it's hard to find a bigger irony. And trust me, by the time we're done here, you're going to see exactly what he means." He's not exaggerating.
So here's the central question for today, the big puzzle we're going to unpack. You might have heard whispers about a potential peace summit in Alaska, of all places, to talk about ending the war in Ukraine, a summit that might involve Ukraine ceding land to Russia. So why? Why is holding that meeting in Alaska, of all places, so deeply ironic? What's the connection?
All right, to get to the bottom of that, we have to rewind, like way back. We're not starting in the 21st century. Nope. Our story begins in the 1700s with this far-flung, fur-rich colony that was actually called Russian America. So, what was Russian America? Well, you're probably thinking Alaska, right? And yeah, that was the main part. But get this, at its peak, it stretched all the way down to a settlement in California. Seriously. And the whole thing, the entire reason for being there, was basically one animal, the sea otter. Their fur was like the luxury good of the era, super valuable, especially for trade with China. It was a money-making machine, for a while.
But like a lot of these colonial gold rushes, it didn't last. The whole thing started to fall apart. For starters, they overhunted the sea otters, the very source of their wealth, almost into extinction. Whoops. On top of that, the settlements were tiny, barely populated, which made them almost impossible to defend. So for the Tsar back in St. Petersburg, Russian America was quickly turning from a cash cow into a giant, expensive headache.
Now, all of this wasn't just happening on its own. The final nail in the coffin for Russian America would actually come from a war happening thousands and thousands of miles away. And that conflict? The Crimean War. Okay, so this is where you have these two massive historical forces on a collision course. On one side, you've got Russia. They just got hammered in the Crimean War. They're weakened, they're broke, and they are absolutely paranoid that their big rival, Great Britain, is just going to stroll in and take Alaska from them. Then, on the other side, you have the United States, which is just exploding across the continent, full of confidence, driven by this powerful idea of manifest destiny.
And this is where the connection becomes crystal clear and kind of spooky. Look at this. 1853, the First Crimean War kicks off, and it really weakens Russia. That leads directly to them selling Alaska in 1867. Now, flash forward about 150 years, 2014, Russia annexes Crimea again, sparking a whole new conflict that leads to the full-scale invasion in 2022. It's not just that history rhymes, it's like a direct, unsettling echo across the centuries.
So you've got a motivated seller in Russia, desperate to unload this territory, and a very ambitious buyer in the United States. The stage is perfectly set for a deal that at the time, nobody could agree on. Was it a stroke of pure genius, or was it a total colossal mistake?
You'd think a deal this big would take years, right? Nope. This whole thing went down unbelievably fast. The two main guys, U.S. Secretary of State William Seward and the Russian Minister Eduard de Stoke, they basically went from the first offer to a final price in just about 2 weeks. And then they hammered out the actual treaty in one marathon, all-night negotiating session, finally signing it at 4 o'clock in the morning.
And what was the final price for this enormous chunk of North America? $7.2 million. Now, I know that sounds like a decent chunk of change for 1867, but just wait till you see what that actually breaks down to. It's just staggering.
Okay, get ready for this. That $7.2 million, it works out to less than 2 cents an acre. Let me say that again, less than 2 cents an acre. To put that in perspective, we're talking about paying less for an acre of land than you'd pay for a single postage stamp today. It was, without a doubt, one of the greatest real estate bargains in human history, even if, at the time, not everybody saw it that way.
And that brings us to the famous nickname the deal got, Seward's Folly. You had these critics, mostly in the press, who just went after him. They couldn't see any value in it. They called it Seward's Icebox, a polar bear garden, just this vast, frozen wasteland. It's important to remember, though, that this was really a loud minority. A lot of Americans were actually pretty thrilled about it, hearing rumors about all the fish, timber, and maybe even gold up there.
All right, and this is where we bring it all back to today. This is the echo. Let's look at how Seward's Folly went from being a joke to becoming, literally, the deal of the century. And, more importantly, how that complete reversal in thinking is now fueling nationalist anger in Russia.
Yeah, that whole folly idea, it didn't last very long at all, because pretty soon they found gold. A lot of gold. Then they realized the sheer scale of the timber and fishing industries. And then, in the 20th century, came the big one, oil. Just unimaginable amounts of oil. That land, bought for pennies, turned out to be an absolute treasure chest of natural resources, which of course eventually led to Alaska becoming the 49th state in 1959.
Now, look at the flip side. The change in perspective in Russia is just as dramatic, if not more so. Immediately after the sale, the official feeling was just relief. Like, whew, glad that's off our books. They saw it as dumping a problem. But then, fast forward to the Soviet era, and the story completely changes. Now it's framed as a huge mistake, a national humiliation. And today, under Putin, that feeling is intensified into this deep, bitter regret over a lost part of their empire.
And let's be clear, this isn't just some dusty historical debate. This regret is alive and well, and it's being actively used as a tool for modern Russian nationalism. You have state-run media constantly bringing it up. You have actual politicians making noise about taking it back. It's become this powerful symbol of what they see as lost greatness. And the calls to reclaim it just get louder and louder as relations between the US and Russia get worse.
And this is where that historical echo becomes a roar. Right after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, billboards started popping up in Russia with this exact phrase on them: "Alaska is ours." It is just a stunningly direct link, showing how a 150-year-old land deal, which was the result of a war in Crimea, is now echoing loudly in another. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Just how much of what's happening today is being driven by the ghosts of things that happened centuries ago.